Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm really so glad you're here with us today.
Yeah, it's great to have you joining us.
Because if you've been looking at the global news lately and, feeling completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of chaotic, rapidly unfolding headlines, well, you have come to the right place.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a lot to take in lately.
It really has. Today, we are analyzing a massive stack of information. Specifically, we're looking at a highly detailed, extensive Patreon post from the geopolitical channel KULT.
Right, and this is dated early March 2026.
Exactly. And this report, it covers a rapidly escalating military conflict in the Middle East. It's a deeply complex web involving Iran, Israel, the United States, and several Gulf states.
Incredibly dense material.
It is. And because we're dealing with incredibly raw, heavily politicized claims from all sides today, from U.S. officials to Iranian media, detailing active military operations and severe casualties, I want to be crystal clear right out at the gate.
Yes, this is an important point to make.
Our job here isn't to take a side. We are absolutely not endorsing the viewpoints, the military actions, or specific claims made by any nation or political figure mentioned in this report.
Whether they lean left, right, or anything in between.
Exactly. We are strictly here to act as your impartial guides. We want to lay out the facts, the allegations, and the ideas exactly as this KULT Air report presents them, so you can understand the bigger picture of what is actually happening.
That context is vital. When we look at source material detailing a region on the absolute brink of total war, it's very easy to get lost in the rhetoric.
Yeah, the noise is deafening.
Right. So our mission today is to cut through that noise. We're going to examine the wild espionage claims, the devastating human costs on the ground, and ultimately the massive economic ripples that are likely already affecting you.
No matter where in the world you're listening from, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this first major claim the report brings up, because it sounds like something pulled straight out of a high-stakes spy thriller.
It really does. But the real-world implications are enormous.
They are. The report outlines a primary accusation from Iran regarding Israel's foreign intelligence agency, the Mossad. Tehran is claiming that Mossad is not just operating against them from the outside, but is actively operating inside Iran's borders.
Inside the country itself.
Yes, inside their own borders, to launch drone attacks. And these attacks are targeting major energy and civilian installations across the Gulf.
The audacity of that claim is just staggering when you look at the specific targets the source mentions. We are talking about Saudi Arabia's Prince Sultan Air Base.
Right.
And perhaps even more critically, the Ras Tanura oil refinery. Ras Tanura isn't just some local facility, it is a massive key Saudi Aramco oil export terminal.
It's a vital artery for global energy.
Exactly. On top of that, other sites in Riyadh were targeted, as well as the port of Duqm over in Oman.
So these are major, major targets.
Yes, and according to Iranian officials cited in the report, this is a highly calculated false flag operation.
A false flag.
Right. The strategic reasoning they outline is fascinating. Iran claims that Israel is launching these drones from within Iranian territory to deliberately provoke regional anger.
So they're trying to frame Iran.
Precisely. The goal, according to Tehran, is to trick Arab nations into blaming Iran for the attacks. And that would, theoretically, drag those Arab states into the broader U.S. and Israeli war against Tehran.
Let's pause on that logistics piece for a second. The idea of a foreign intelligence agency setting up secret drone launch sites inside a hostile country, how does that even work practically?
It sounds impossible at first glance.
It really does.
Yeah.
But the KULT report mentions two Iranian sources who told the media that Mossad is utilizing a pre-established network of agents and logistics hidden right there within Iran's own borders.
They're apparently actively tearing the country apart, searching for these hidden warehouses where the drones are stored.
Which is wild. One source even suggested these secret Mossad operational rooms likely exist in other regional countries as well. So I have to ask, is there any historical precedent for an operation of this scale inside Iran?
What's fascinating here is that there is, and that is what makes this claim, while wild, something analysts actually have to take seriously.
Right.
The KULT report provides essential historical context here. Mossad has a highly documented history of maintaining extensive, deeply embedded networks inside Iran. Israel has previously been linked to several highly sophisticated covert operations deep within Iranian territory.
Like the cyber attacks, Rick.
Exactly. We can look at the major cyber attacks that crippled Iran's nuclear infrastructure years ago, or the incredibly brazen physical operation, where operatives broke into a warehouse in Tehran and smuggled an entire archive of nuclear documents out of the country.
I remember reading about that. That was huge.
It was. And there was also the assassination of a senior Iranian nuclear scientist that was reportedly carried out using a highly advanced satellite-controlled machine gun mounted in the back of a pickup truck.
That still sounds like science fiction to me.
I know, but it happened. So, while a hidden warehouse full of explosive drones sounds like Hollywood fiction, the source points out that it actually fits a well-established historical pattern of highly sophisticated, on-the-ground, covert operations.
Wow. And while this shadow war is allegedly happening behind the scenes, the diplomatic maneuvering out in the open is incredibly intense.
It's moving at light speed.
It is. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian and Deputy Foreign Minister Majid Takhravanchi are scrambling to deny any involvement in these Gulf blasts.
Right, the report notes they have been privately messaging Saudi Arabia, swearing that Iran had nothing to do with the strike on the Ras Tanura refinery.
President Pezeshkian even took to the social platform X to publicly plead with neighboring states. He addressed the leaders of the Middle East directly, calling for regional unity and collective security.
He insisted that security has to be achieved through cooperation, not foreign intervention.
The subtext there seems pretty clear to me. It's basically, we are only defending ourselves. Please do not let outside forces drag you into a war against us.
It is a remarkably delicate diplomatic tightrope. And it is further complicated by the fact that the Gulf states are facing intense competing pressures.
How so?
Well, the source points out that during a virtual meeting of the Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC, which is the primary political and economic alliance of the Arab states, bordering the Gulf officials noted that responding to Iranian attacks remains an option to protect their regional security.
Because they have to protect their own interests.
Right. These nations are deeply allied with Washington, and Washington is applying heavy pressure to support the campaign against Iran. So Tehran is fighting a massive war of perception, just as fiercely as the physical war.
Okay, speaking of the physical war, we really need to transition into the wider military offensive that the KULT post explicitly names Operation Epic Fury.
Yes, Epic Fury.
This isn't covert. This is a massive open campaign that the report states kicked off over the weekend.
The timeline and the sheer scale being discussed by U.S. officials are quite revealing here.
What are they saying?
U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, representing the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump, emphasized that they have sufficient ammunition to sustain this campaign for an extended period.
They're digging in.
They are. Hegseth suggested the offensive could last anywhere from 3 to 8 weeks. And he explicitly noted that the U.S. and Israel are the ones setting the pace of the operation.
Which brings us to a specific event detailed in this text that genuinely made me stop reading and just stare at the page.
The submarine strike.
Yes. It completely underscores the terrifying reach of modern naval warfare. The KULT report details the sinking of an Iranian frigate, the Iris Dina, by a U.S. submarine torpedo.
It's a massive escalation.
But what is so shocking isn't just the sinking itself, but where it happened. This was nowhere near the Persian Gulf.
Not at all.
It happened in the Indian Ocean off the southern coast of Sri Lanka near a port city called Delhi. We are talking about a location that is a staggering 3,200 kilometers away from the Iranian coast.
It's a massive distance.
Why strike a ship that far away?
The geography of that strike is the entire point. A frigate is a major multi-million-dollar naval vessel. It projects power. And in this case, the Iris Dina was thousands of kilometers from home, acting as a guest of the Indian Navy at the time.
A guest of the Indian Navy.
Yes. Sri Lankan authorities reported that the distress call came in early Wednesday morning. By sinking this vessel so far outside the immediate theater of conflict, the message being sent is one of absolute global reach.
Tragically, the human toll of that single strike was severe.
It was devastating.
Out of the nearly 130 sailors on board, rescue teams only managed to save 32. At least 83 sailors died in the sinking.
And to put that into the broader context of Operation Epic Fury, the source notes that the U.S. has bombed more than 20 Iranian ships since the offensive began.
The clashing perspectives on this Sri Lanka incident are fascinating to read. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, took to X to condemn the sinking as an atrocious act.
He was furious.
He heavily emphasized that it happened in international waters, completely without warning, and he issued a very dark caution. He stated that the U.S. will deeply regret the precedent it has set by attacking a ship in the open ocean like that.
But when you look at the rhetoric from the U.S. side, They framed that exact same reality as a strategic triumph.
They leaned right into it.
They did. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth bluntly stated that the Iranian ship believed it was safe in international waters, but instead it was destroyed by a torpedo.
So they wanted to prove a point.
He deliberately used the incident to demonstrate the vast, undeniable reach of Washington's forces. The message to Tehran, and frankly to the rest of the world watching, is incredibly stark. It's that nowhere is safe.
So what does this all mean? We've been talking a lot about geopolitical chess moves, the secret warehouses, the power projection, the submarine strikes thousands of miles away. But we have to ground this in what is actually happening to the people living through it.
We do.
The tone of the KULT source material shifts very heavily to detail the devastating human toll inside Iran, and we need to give that the time it deserves. The statistics provided by the Iranian Ministry of Health are incredibly solemn.
They are heartbreaking. The report states that at least 926 people have been killed under Israeli-American fire.
926 people.
Yes. Furthermore, 6,186 people have been injured. And as of the report's writing, over 2,054 of those individuals are still hospitalized.
That places an immense strain on the local medical infrastructure.
It does. It completely overwhelms it.
And the most harrowing detail in this entire deep dive has to be the tragedy in the city of Minab. A spokesman for the health ministry, Hossein Kermanpour, revealed that out of the dead, 180 were under the age of 18.
Children.
That includes 3 children who were under the age of 5.
It's a heavy thing to read.
The source explains that the vast majority of these children were killed in a specific horrific attack on a girls' school in Minab. That single strike claimed the lives of 165 students.
165 students at a school.
The text describes thousands of mourners, family members, local residents, officials gathering for a mass funeral. It is a very heavy reminder that behind all the talk of strategic deterrence and false flags, there is a very real, very permanent civilian cost to this operation.
It is a devastating reality.
Yeah.
And alongside those immediate casualties, the bombings have triggered a massive, localized refugee crisis.
Right.
The KULTBA post cites the UN Refugee Agency, or UNHCR, which reported that an estimated 100,000 people fled the capital city of Tehran in just the first 2 days of the attack, specifically on February 28th and March 1st.
I want you to just try and visualize that for a second. Imagine the entire population of a mid-sized American city like Erie, Pennsylvania, or Boulder, Colorado, just packing whatever they can carry and hitting the highway, emptying out over a single 48-hour weekend.
The sheer scale of that panic.
The logistical chaos of 100,000 people fleeing a major metropolitan city all at once is hard to wrap your head around.
It is a logistical nightmare for any government to manage, let alone one under active bombardment. But there's a very specific detail in the UNHCR report that the source highlights, which adds another layer to this crisis.
Which is?
This displacement is almost entirely internal. Iranian citizens are fleeing to different parts of their own country, rather than crossing into neighboring nations.
They aren't leaving Iran.
No. The UN explicitly noted that there has been no increase in cross-border movements. For example, they monitored the situation at the Islam Kala border crossing with Afghanistan, and it remains completely stable.
No significant changes observed there.
None. What this means on a practical level is that the crisis is entirely contained within Iran's borders. All 100,000 of those displaced people still need food, shelter, and medical care, which multiplies the internal strain on the country's already targeted infrastructure.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If you are listening to this right now and thinking that this is purely a regional conflict that won't directly affect your daily life, we need to talk about the economic domino effect.
Yes, because it absolutely will affect everyone.
The KULT post draws a very direct line from these military strikes to the global economy, and all of that pressure funnels through one specific, incredibly vulnerable geographical choke point.
You were referring, of course, to the Strait of Hormuz.
Yes.
For those who might not have a map in front of them, the Strait of Hormuz is a very narrow waterway situated right between Iran and Oman. It connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the open ocean.
It's vital.
It is arguably the single most critical maritime choke point on the planet. To put it in perspective, roughly a fifth of the world's total oil and liquefied natural gas flows through that narrow stretch of water.
A fifth of the world's supply.
Exactly. If that strait closes, or even if major shipping companies simply perceive it to be too dangerous to send their massive multi-million-dollar vessels through the global energy supply chain, goes into immediate shock.
And right now, according to the report, there is a massive standoff happening right in the middle of that strait.
There is.
Iran's Revolutionary Guard has essentially asserted that the Strait of Hormuz is under their complete control. They've issued a blatant warning that any vessels failing to comply with their protocols could be attacked or sunk.
And they aren't just making empty threats.
No. The source notes they claim to have already set a U.S. oil tanker aflame in the northern Gulf.
The U.S. response has been equally assertive, though perhaps a bit more strategically ambiguous regarding timelines.
What are they saying?
President Trump stated that measures will be taken soon to ensure the free flow of energy to the world. Following up on that, White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt confirmed that the U.S. Navy is prepared to escort oil tankers through the waterway if and when necessary.
But no timeline on that.
Right. She explicitly declined to commit to a specific timeline for those escorts, noting that the War Department and the Energy Department are actively assessing the situation.
And that ambiguity leaves the shipping markets in a state of extreme anxiety.
Precisely. Markets hate ambiguity.
And global markets absolutely do not wait for bureaucratic assessments. The source lays out the immediate economic reality here. Since maritime traffic in the strait decreased dramatically due to these threats, energy prices have soared.
It was instantaneous.
In just 1 week, European natural gas benchmarks surged by a staggering 50%.
50% in a week.
And Brent crude, which is essentially the global benchmark used to price 2/3 of the world's internationally traded crude oil, shot up by 12%.
That is a massive spike.
It is. That translates directly to the price of fuel, the cost of transporting goods, and the inflation you see at your local grocery store.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where we have to look at the ultimate wild card in this economic and military standoff.
Which is Iran's remaining military capability.
Yes, specifically regarding asymmetric warfare. Even with Operation Epic Fury heavily underway, Tehran possesses a massive industrial base.
What kind of numbers are we talking about?
Well, the KULT source cites the Center for Information Resilience, which is a research group funded by the British Foreign Office. They estimate that Iran has the capacity to manufacture around 10,000 drones every single month.
10,000 drones a month. That level of industrial output completely changes the math of a conflict.
It absolutely does.
You are talking about relatively cheap $20,000 pieces of hardware that can paralyze a $100 million oil tanker.
Precisely. It is the definition of asymmetric warfare. And while their drone capacity is known to be vast, their missile arsenal is the true unknown variable keeping military planners awake at night.
Because nobody knows the exact number.
Right. The report points out that estimates wildly vary. The Israeli military estimates that Iran currently has around 2,500 missiles.
Okay, 2,500.
However, independent analysts suggest the number could be closer to 6,000.
That's a huge gap.
That discrepancy, a gap of 3,500 highly destructive weapons, is exactly why the future of the Strait of Hormuz, and by extension the stability of the global economy, remains incredibly uncertain. You cannot properly defend a choke point if you don't know the actual size of the arsenal pointed at it.
It is genuinely a lot to process, and it really shows how interconnected all these seemingly isolated events are.
They are all tied together.
We started by looking at allegations of Mossad smuggling drone parts to build hidden warehouses inside Iran, attempting to launch false flag attacks on Saudi Arabia and Oman to trigger a wider war.
Right.
We looked at the staggering power projection of the U.S. Navy, sinking a multi-million-dollar frigate 3,200 kilometers away near Sri Lanka to send a message.
Setting that precedent.
We took a sobering, necessary look at the tragic human cost on the ground, especially the 165 students lost at the girls' school in Minab, and the logistical nightmare of 100,000 people displaced internally from Tehran.
The human element is the heaviest part of this report.
It is. And finally, we tracked how all of these military and covert actions converge on a single narrow waterway, the Strait of Hormuz, sending global oil and gas prices through the roof.
It touches everything.
As a final reminder, every single piece of information, every staggering statistic, and every quote we discussed today was drawn strictly from the KULT source material. Our goal is always to be your impartial guide through this deeply complex information, helping you see how the pieces fit together.
As we wrap up this analysis, there is a lingering thought that I encourage you to mull over on your own as you watch this situation continue to develop.
Let's hear it.
When a modern conflict features alleged false flag operations, where the origin of an attack is deliberately obscured, and a single geographical choke point can instantly inflate global energy prices by 50%, we have to ask, how fragile is our modern global supply chain?
That's a great question.
Furthermore, in an era where covert drone strikes can potentially be launched from hidden warehouses inside a target's own borders, how can the international community ever definitively prove who started the next phase of a war?
That is the exact kind of massive, unanswered question that keeps us diving into these sources week after week. Thank you so much for joining us today and letting us custom tailor this breakdown for you. Take this information, keep exploring, and stay curious. We will be right here waiting for you when the next stack of sources arrives. Take care.